Welcome back to More Than Commas. I'm your host, Paul Adams. This is part 2 of a 4-part series where we are looking at white coat investors' response to the Ernst Young white paper about the value of life insurance in your balance sheet. Enjoy this episode. Eighteen problems with the Ernst Young Insurance Products in Retirement Study. Number 1, Corey, is ridiculous advisory management fees. So what he says in this section, we don't have to go through it deeply, but I'm going to hit a couple pieces, is he's basically saying, Corey, they are making an assumption that the industry average is 1.25% in investment advisory fees, and that's a problem. Now, I will say one of the things I did is I used the new deep search or deep research section of ChatGPT, and I Googled a bunch of these. So 1.25% is the average fee paid to an advisory firm for anybody who has under $500,000, which both of these couples do. So what they're doing right there is they're using the absolute average. And what he's saying, now the industry average is 1%, which is true probably if you're going all the way up to people with 10, 20 million, but that's not who's in the study. But
also, he's not citing his source. He's just saying the industry average is 1.
There are no sources cited.
Get that from?
Yep.
And so that, and by the way, like, there's a part of me that agrees with the like, well, okay, someone should be able to do better than that, but which denominator are we solving for? The person who knows the most or knows the least? Like, to say someone should be able to do better than that fee when we know we've met lots of people that just didn't really know how to look up what the fees were in their account. Like, we can't always give that benefit of the doubt every time either. So,
right.
So yeah, I think 1.25, it's fair for the study. We're also go ahead.
Here's the other part that I think is kind of key here. So at 1.25%, so what we're assuming is the advisor is doing nothing but getting you market rate of return minus their fee. They have zero other value, which might be why he wrote a book and sells a book on it. And then in his articles makes that implication, even though Vanguard Retirement released a study that says the average advisor, by just helping clients hold strategy, even if their investment selection of the advisor isn't good, but keeping the client from moving when they shouldn't, adds up to 3% a year. You guys can look at that. It's a Vanguard advisor study. So let's just take that aside. Now, what he says is the differences are 9.25 versus 8. And in the study, they use an equity markets Barclays historical average.
Yeah.
But that's a little bit higher than 9.25. But he's saying, look, the difference between these two is the difference between 5.6 million and 7.14 million, which is true if you multiplied those numbers and you didn't tax either one of the numbers and you never made a mistake, cash money out, etc., and you did that for 30 years solid. Okay. So what he's saying is that 1.25%, there was zero other value that came from it, despite studies showing otherwise. He's showing is a net reduction in investment returns. And I'm even willing to potentially give him that. But the thing is that they do include it in the study because it is what the average person pays. Okay. Ridiculous equity turnover rate. The study also used, and so this is number 2. The study also used an equity turnover ratio of 25% in their assumptions. While we're not talking about inherent annual equity turnover in mutual funds, which is a little less than 5% in total market index funds, we're talking about selling the entire taxable portfolio every 4 years and realizing capital gains on it. Now, I know that due to our charitable giving that I can invest our taxable account in a very tax efficient way. We never pay realized gain, actually deduct losses every year and flush capital gains out of the account by gifting appreciated shares. But 25% a year is ridiculously tax inefficient. Of course, that's going to make the investment comparison look bad. But wait, there's more. Okay.
So like I kind of get the never pay a realized gain is weird to me because like yeah, so what he's talking about is the idea of gifting your appreciated shares into a donor advised trust or something like that so that you get a deduction for that. You don't have to deal with those shares, but if you're never paying any gain, you're giving all of your growth away. Like eventually you would be spending some of that money and paying the gain. So I don't quite understand
Yeah,
that
he's
part.
what I think he's doing. If you think about it, he's what I'm imagining he's doing with his portfolios. Let's say he gets, with turnover ratio, all that. Let's say there's 50,000 in the portfolio went up 200, but there's 50,000 taxable that year. So then all he's doing is taking 50,000 of that appreciated shares, gifting the shares themselves, and getting that full tax
Getting
deduction,
that full tax write off.
which is kind of a fun thing to do. And I
That is a fun
appreciate
thing.
him putting it
Okay.
in here.
Yeah.
And I agree with him on this one. I think the turnover ratio of 25% is high. Um, and it is tax inefficient, but we're not talking about the difference over 30 years on that much of the turnover ratio as being, you know, but it's probably not the difference between retiring and not.
Well, and
You,
let's if they don't turn that over and they keep that gain growing, like they're going to pay it at some point, and if
in your
taxes go
retirement.
up in the future, then
Yep.
they will pay. This is actually having them pay less tax over time. So it kind of like
Yeah.
yes, I get what he's
You're
saying,
getting
but I wouldn't use the
basis
word
or
ridiculous, right? Like
you're deferring capital gains. So again, it's another one of those that's like, and ridiculous equity turnover rate. Well, what he's doing is saying it's ridiculous because he thinks it should be 2 and it's at 25 or whatever.
right.
But the difference it makes over time, because you're paying taxes you go, your basis is getting higher and higher. Okay. Ridiculous equity dividend rate. Okay. So dividends make taxable investments less tax efficient. They basically function as a mandatory taxable refund of capital. The study, which by the way, me personally, I think that's cool. That's a cool way to say it.
That is a
Like,
cool way to
I
say
like,
it. Yeah.
all right, Dr. Dahl, I like that one. Uh, the study uses a dividend rate of 2.5%. That doesn't seem crazy until you realize, like, this is him, right? I'm doing him.
Right.
Until you realize that the dividend yield of a US stock market index fund, as I write this, is 1.37. Yes, almost doubling the assumed yield is going to have an effect on your results. Yes, that effect is going to make the investment comparison look bad. But wait, there's more. Okay. So, quick pause. Do you know what the equity dividend rate has been the last 20 years, Corey?
Well, that's what I was going to ask. I haven't looked it up recently. Is it
Two and a half.
2.5%?
Yep, that's yeah, exactly right. That was part of my 45 minutes this morning grinding before you got here
Yeah.
was looking at every single one of the. And think about that for a second. He is, and by
It's
the way,
furious.
doctor, you need to own this. You are intentionally misleading people because of how you wrote this. That doesn't seem crazy until you realize the dividend yield of US stock market index fund as I write this. That doesn't matter. You know that doesn't matter. The the point in time, exactly right now, that variable is what it is useless information because what we need is a trend over time for any kind of planning or projection. Now, here's another one of his big problems. And I think one of his big problems may tell us something. Here's another hilarious finger on the scale. The assumption you're starting with is a taxable investment account that already consists of 50% gain. That's right. Before it grows at all, it somehow already had 100% gain. That means when you sell it, you'll pay more in taxes, again, making the investment comparison look bad. The basis in my taxable account is far closer to zero, far closer to 100% of the portfolio than 50%. And I'm already financially independent, but there's more. Okay, so I want you to pause right here for a second. There's a lot in this one, Corey. So, of the assets, Corey, what he's saying it's a problem that the assets they have on their balance sheet already have a taxable equity basis of 50% of assets. Okay. And he's saying This is a big mother-loving problem. It's such a big problem. It's number 4 out of 18, Corey.
This episode is brought to you by Sound Financial Group. At Sound Financial, we specialize in helping clients build strong, long-term financial strategies for their retirement. If you're looking for personalized advice to help manage your wealth, visit us at sfgway.com to learn more about how we can help you achieve your goals.
Could you imagine a problem bigger than that? Well, there's 3 bigger than that. But
Three
this
bigger
is
than
4,
that.
okay?
Well,
No,
okay,
but
so
let me finish. I gotta set this up. Let me finish this first. So let's talk about how much money this is of the total amount of money we're talking about over 30 plus years. Okay, 50% of assets. So up here, further in the paper, we have those little case studies. So with our older, wealthier couple, their total initial wealth is 475, of which only 75 is taxable. So he's saying that 35,000 of additional basis in this person's life at the very beginning of the timeline matters. Oh, by the way, for all of you out there that may not have your calculator out, you're driving, I'll give you a secret. It doesn't matter. It's way too small.
So they have 75,000 of taxable wealth and 50% basis in that.
75,000 of basis instead of 37.5.
So 45,000 times 20%, 8,000, $9,000 something of taxes. Yeah, it's not. It's really small.
And by the way, here's the other one. That's the bigger one. The other scenario in this white paper is a younger couple. And their total taxable wealth is 10,000. This is number 4, Corey. Okay. All right. Let's go back.
35-year-old has 30,000 of taxable wealth. So yeah, compared to the qualified, it's just so small.
It's just small. Now, by the way, do I think he may be right for this couple? Like, yeah, a young saver like that probably doesn't have that much growth yet. But they had to make assumptions to be equal for both scenarios, and they made that call.
Well,
the other thing that I think is funny is just me. I'd personally like to see the math, because if you're financially independent and most of your portfolio is basis or is not basis, but you're having to do all of these tricks to get your, like, but I would say that I don't know why you wouldn't have more gains in your portfolio is my point.
Right.
Because he's saying he has less than 25% of untaxable gain in his portfolio, with portfolios that he's saying has less than a 5% turnover. So help me with that math, Corey. Like, and he's getting a 7% rate of return. Shouldn't that double in 10 years? I assume he's been investing more than 10 years.
But he's gifting. He's got the gifting strategy to gift the appreciated shares. So
he's growing more cap gain. So all that I'm saying is that's, I don't know, but it doesn't matter. I don't know that I believe that he only has less than 25% gain because of how much he talks about the good investor he is and how little turnover he has. So if he's holding his philosophy, I think he has a hard time backing this up. But that being said, he's giving a personal example. I don't want to attack that. I think he's correct that it'd be closer to 80-90% basis, and it doesn't matter. Let's get to the next one. High, number five from Dr. Dahl. High state tax assumptions. In the study, they assumed a state income tax of 6%. And he goes on to say you'd pay more in some states, less in some states. And he's saying it's high. Now, he doesn't say what they should have put in. In fact, you'll notice across the board, he does not say what they should have done. Instead of using this assumption, is use that one. He is just ranting about why they shouldn't have done what they've done. You can see that in the other 4 so far. And it's really easy not to see this in all types of media that we read, because it sounds really factual. What I had to do to suss this out, because on my first read, I was like, okay, maybe I agree with that. Maybe I agree with that. And then I started going, okay, does the white paper say that he's saying? And then I would have to go check. And that's why this took so long. So, by the way, I don't know. I think 6% is fine. But if you thought it should be 4, make it 4. Weird assumptions. I find it bizarre that people in the examples only pay 15% on their cap gains, but somehow have enough money to have an estate tax problem where they owe 40%. He, okay, Dr.
Well,
Dahl, you
can
you
I
say
read
it the
it?
way you
Can
want.
I?
You didn't read the study, or you're intentionally saying a falsehood. Sorry, Corey.
Well, so they could have put in a 20% capital gains tax assumption, but they're using 15, so that's actually making it better for the investments, but he's not acknowledging that. My read of the tax assumptions is up to 40% based on bracket. So
That's right.
they're using
And
the
they're all in
tax
a
bracket.
0%.
Right.
Exactly right, Corey. That's why I'm saying is didn't read the white paper or intentionally misleading the audience. Because this is right there. That if you said what are the assumptions on that, because I thought maybe it's hard to find. Again, guys, I went into this with the greatest amount of when I started reading because the first one I was like, oh, okay, maybe I could see that on the fees. But then I'm like, well, wait. And then as we dig deeper, it's like each one falls more and more apart. But it says right in the white paper, in the estate tax, I'm just going to, just since I'm calling this guy out for not doing this, I'm just going to show everybody up to 40% based on bracket. Well,
Mhm.
here's the thing. Federal income taxes based upon the bracket of the earnings they have each year in the projection. The state income tax rate they're holding steady at 6. It's holding cap gains steady at 15. By the way, even if these people earned more later, between the 25% turnover of their income or their portfolio plus their income, they probably ended up in a higher cap gains rate at some point during the projection, but they left it at 15. They had the beneficiaries only taxed on income at 25%, despite getting six-figure retirement
Right.
accounts that often people take in one year, and it's based
That's
on
true.
bracket. So there's some real misleading stuff
Yeah.
because he is out and out saying that they're saying they have a tax problem. It's like, no, they're an accounting firm and they are accounting for all of the assumptions. That was one assumption. It probably didn't get activated because of how high
Right.
that
No
first
one, like
bracket
the
was.
highest situation I see is 4.2 million legacy at the end of time horizon. So no one's triggering the estate tax.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay. That's his weird tax assumption. Now, you all can do this with nearly every financial article you read. I just don't want that to get lost. We are not doing anything drastic. It's just walking in and saying, well, help me understand where you got that. And if you're learning, and this is important when you're learning from someone, is not to learn what it is they say and then believe that. It's to understand how they got to that belief, which means you have to take apart the components. And what we're learning is he believes this for reasons that are actually not in this article. They're in his life prior to writing this article. Is that fair, Corey?
Yep.
Okay. Black box insurance products. So, what insurance products do Ernst Young compare these investments to? They don't tell you. Now, this is the worst straw man fallacy out there. Is when you say to somebody, "You didn't show me exactly what you did." It's like, well, you didn't ask, right? Like these paper, we've seen these kinds of white papers, economists write them, academics, and there are these kind of industry-wide assumptions for, say, like a mutual whole life company's base policy performance. And I will tell you, the base policy they use underperforms the type of policies we build because they take the street level product and we re-engineer it to get most of the compensation out to the advisor. It really makes it more like
Let's
a
say that
corporate
again.
product.
To 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 add more cash to the client and less compensation to the advisor. I think the way you
Yes.
said it sounded like
Oh,
get
yeah.
most of that
Thank you.
out. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
no,
Sorry.
yeah,
Yeah. So it drives more value
yeah,
to the client, which does drive down some compensation. They are using a street level product that's got the full compensation on it and everything to the advisor. So they're actually using a whole life insurance product that is substandard to a regular one. Now,
right.
what they do is they do use best health class. So that's true. I think it's in this course, they use the healthiest person they can find to buy the policy. Yeah, because they also use the equity assumptions based upon the average for the last 20 years. Like you would put your best foot forward. Why would they make the illustration based upon a class
Right.
4 diabetic?
That's
Now,
uh, uh, this white paper is not replacing all the work. We don't just give clients this white paper and say, go get some insurance now. Like
Right. Or
it's
nobody reads this and then just
right.
blindly calls somebody and says, okay, my income, all right, I need to put $1,600 a year in.
It is the nature of life insurance that you don't know if you can get it or not until you apply, and you could get a
Mhm.
rating that has it work less well in some ways. Like that is a consideration.
Yep.
Um, so, but
But
that
the
is
same thing is you're reading a white paper. Like the white paper is demonstrating a strategy or way of thinking to me. The white paper is not it's like I wouldn't go read a white paper and then be like, "Oh yes, I can go get a 3% mortgage just because the white paper said there were 3% mortgages 5 years ago."
I
That is
am positive. Like I'd be willing to bet that any advertiser on his site that advertises term insurance or disability insurance, if they show a rate, it's going to be the best class rate. Like that's just the nature of
yeah.
where you start, right? So
Yep. So no
out in the
no
marketing
risky
world.
hobbies, no medical problems. So in any case, he's like, hey, you put the best foot forward with the life insurance. But the thing is that if you get bad health ratings, then the math doesn't work. So why like that like we've done that with clients who get bad health ratings, like, hey, this strategy would have worked if you were preferred, but you're, a smoker that rides bulls
Except
and
it's a different episode. We can't dive into this, but perhaps the math still does work if you get worse health ratings
yes,
because that life insurance is just
it
paying
can.
sooner. It can't. So
It
that's
can,
yeah,
yep. So black box insurance products, like, yeah, because and I think there's actually some legalities. They cannot actually take a real life insurance policy as non-licensed agents and display that out to the world. They have to use a composite product to write a
right,
paper like this.
right.
Uh, hey, I'm so glad you could be here for episode 316. Join us next week for episode 317, where we're going to continue reviewing the critique from White Coat Investor about that Ernst Young white paper.